I've been wanting to do this for a year, and now I get a chance.
Okay.
Mike to Mike is back, powered by Fanatics. And let's welcome one of the ultimate fans behind the mic. We're going out to the West Coast. Please help me welcome Brian Fonseca. What's up, Fonzie?
Well, good morning, or good late morning there where you are.
Yeah,
How you doing, man?
It's close to lunch hour here in the Northeast.
Yeah, I should have set my time. I should have set my watch ahead. You know, they always say it's harder going west to east, right, than east to west.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to do it a few times. One of the most difficult sports. Welcome to the show. One of the most difficult sports that I learned to call on the fly is volleyball. I did it at Chicago State for 10 years. Tell the fans, if you would, take the fans through a volleyball match broadcast, because it's insane. And I started doing it the year they introduced rally scoring. It's insane.
Well, it's definitely fast and a lot of fun. What I found in general is after years that the athletes and the coaches really appreciate the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they were great. They've been great about it. I've been fortunate to cover. So I had some big West matches last year, and I got to cover Hawaii, which was a real thrill actually to cover the Wahine Rainbow. So, but yeah, it's so fast. And the hardest thing I've noticed, at least from my vantage point, is you sit kind of low. So you're right at midcourt. Actually, I'm a little bit to the right, which is close to the visiting bench, which is a great seat, you would think. But now I'm also an old basketball coach, so keep that in mind. Basketball coach used to being up. You kind of have the whole floor in sight. You have the officials in sight. There's no bar. There's no net. You don't have people walking in front of you very often. You're walking in front of people.
Yes.
So that's what I noticed at first, that it's really hard. At first, I felt like I was just, it was just going so fast. And I found that it was really hard to watch. The net's in the way, the players, the officials kind of walk. Where is the official? You have one you have one up top, you have one at the net. So in basketball, you can kind of tell, or even football, right? Who makes the call? Where is it coming? And then originally, I would say the toughest challenge was learning the opposing team, the gals on the other team. Mm-hmm. You know, you try to study ahead of time. You look at their nice pictures on the media guide or on the website, and they're really nice, and they look a lot different. Boy, once they play, everybody's got ponytails, typically blonde, not all, but they're long hair, so you can't read the names. So all of a sudden, things just really sped up. So even though I loved it at first, it was like, wow, there's a lot going on, and it seems like it's really fast. So what I realized early is you've got to be able to try to figure out some way to recognize the individuals. Like, for example, you're wearing a pink shirt. I love it. So I love the players who had maybe little different laces on, or who maybe colored their hair. Anything I could see, that was a gift to get started.
Yeah.
Letting them show their personality a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so as a coach, I know you remember thinking, God, why don't they just take care of themselves? And you want them to look the same. But now as an announcer, I'm like, I don't mind a little bit of the gal who has their little bit different shoestring or anything. Now, I also have to joke, because as I have grown into the sport, it really becomes so much about watching the setter.
Yes.
What's the setter doing? What's the setter moving? How's the setter moving? Some setters like to do drops. So watching the setters, but they actually like to blend in, and it's kind of their strategy that setters want to be hidden a little bit. So to me, that's again counterintuitive announcing. I want to know where the setter is. It's kind of like, imagine a quarterback, right? Hiding kind of every play, or you don't know where the quarterback is, or, hey, where's the quarterback? Where's the point guard? Are they hiding in the play? So I found that to be really fascinating, because the setters are so fabulous. They're just wonderful volleyball players, and most of them get set and hit. And so I found that a trick too, to really kind of notice the setter and recognize the setter and what do they like. Some can block really well. So those are a couple of things: how fast it is, recognizing players, and also trying to recognize the setter. And again, that vantage point with the net and bodies, it was just a little bit, I felt a little bit out of my comfort zone. As a basketball coach, you can just you can walk on the floor and you can zoom in everything. Now I felt like everything was kind of going across my vision.
Mm-hmm. Everything's right there in front of you. Who are some of the voices that inspired you to pursue play-by-play announcing?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I have to go back. I don't want to tell my age, but you can probably guess if you can know how many Super Bowls there have been when Super Bowl and my birthdays are not far apart. So
right,
I would say the announcers that stick out are the college basketball, watching Billy Packer, Al McGuire, Dick Berg. I think those are the guys that probably I loved. As a matter of fact, I grew up, watching college basketball, Magic Bird. That was right in my kind of wheelhouse. Again, showing you how old I am, unfortunately. But those three. And to me, what I loved about Al McGuire is he just made basketball fun.
Yes.
Now, you go back later, look at his memoirs. How prepared was he? But the French pastry, the aircraft carrier, he really made it fun for me. So those were the three. But then being a West Coast guy, I always listened to sports. We were the crazy family. My father and I, that would drive my family crazy. We'd have one game on TV and we had a big stereo console in the back, so we'd have another game on. I grew up really enjoying Bill King as a basketball and radio announcer in the West Coast. Holy Toledo, the Raiders. You probably hear some of his.
I remember Billy. I remember Billy so well.
And he was great with basketball. I always thought he was with the Warriors. He was really good. He's so fast, and he was obviously very intelligent. So he would say words that I didn't understand. And then I'd say on a national scene, really Dick Engberg. Oh my! He had this. He kind of reminds me of himself. He always had this kind of peppy personality. He seemed to call all the sports I liked. He was basketball. He was football. He also did tennis. I'm a little bit of a tennis aficionado, if I may say. So I just thought he always brought like joy. And maybe what I realized, now I'm a Northern California guy, so I grew up near Sacramento, give or take. Actually, my house almost halfway between Sacramento and the Oakland Coliseum. That was kind of my house, small town.
Very nice.
But I always like Dick Engberg, and I don't know if that was something about I had this attraction because he was a Southern California guy. Well, actually, he was a Midwest guy who transplanted to Southern California.
He transplanted.
But I just really enjoyed it. He always, another one that seemed fun. Oh my, didn't seem a homer. So those are probably the guys that have stuck out. Now then, as I've kind of lately watching a little bit of soccer or football, as we say, JP Camarena, I love his calls. So that would kind of be, I mentioned I'm a Raider fan, so obviously John Madden walked a little bit on water. Where I was from.
Just a little bit. I love John Madden.
And he seemed like the real man's man, right? He didn't seem any pretenses. He was so I kind of grew up, again, I've given away a little bit of my biases there, but so those would be the guy, Enberg, McGuire, Packer. Those would be and I just thought fun, and they brought fun to the telecast. I really like the Angels announcers, is Rory and Mark Gubaza. I really enjoy them. The Yankees announcers I've enjoyed. I think just the different, being again, I have my West Coast accent, right? We Californians, we don't have an accent. So the Yankees I've enjoyed, just the different. But that's kind of the group. But I really if I had to go back to one, I would say Dick Enberg. But I think it's because I heard him so many places: football, basketball, even the tennis.
Yeah.
But I grew up. My mom, I guess my mother was the Olympic sport person, so we always grew up watching Winter Olympics, watching tennis. Actually, 4th of July was Wimbledon. As crazy as that sounds.
England,
I'm not sure how that exactly goes. Peggy Fleming, I think, was my first crush. The flowing ice skater.
Who didn't have a crush on Peggy Fleming growing up? Okay, come on. I had a crush on Peggy Fleming.
Just so graceful, right? You talk about Dancing with the Stars. She was all about lines, and again, that was my. I could tell you some other crushes, but that's probably our G-rated one we can keep.
Yes.
There was a roller derby movie too with Raquel Welch. I'll just leave it at that.
Leave it there.
That kind of burned some things in my brain too. But Peggy Fleming and just the class. So I'll stick to Peggy. How's that?
One of the announcers I grew up listening to back home in Chicago, you said about Al McGuire making the game fun. For me, that identifiable voice was Johnny Red Kerr, who sat alongside Jim Durham for many, many years. And whenever you see Michael Jordan's tongue out, ready to do something stupid to the opponent, you know Johnny's going to explode. And I'd wait for that. So I had Johnny Kerr, John Madden, as you mentioned. I love Dick Enberg. Love Dick Enberg. I used "Oh My" on a couple of occasions in 30 years, but only a couple. But one of my favorite baseball voices, the first baseball voice I ever heard, was the late great Vin Scully. Vin Scully and Saturday afternoon baseball was it for me and my dad. I didn't care if mom told me to go outside and play. Dad would race upstairs and said, "We're sneaking down to the basement and we're going to watch some baseball." So just to hear Vin Scully's voice, and I hear it in my head every time I take the microphone to do a baseball game, that was one of my guiding lights for the sport.
He's so smooth. I think Venice is so smooth right now. Because I grew up in Northern California, guy, I don't know if I had a little bit. I was not a Giants fan. A lot of my friends are. But I am not. I mentioned it. And also, as growing up as an A's fan, there was an old announcer, Charlie Moore, and he was really a bit of a homer. Oh my! And so I think I grew up kind of a little bit of a probably homer. Also, again, I have to chuckle. It's a little different era when you talk about Oakland A's and Oakland Raiders.
Yes,
right? A little bit of the underdogs, the rebels. I don't have it anymore, but longer hair, right? The mustaches. So I think probably even the announcers resonated that, and I probably gravitated a little bit, initially to the kind of rebel. I liked Tim McMahon when he was a quarterback. I kind of just gravitated to but that's why I think Michael Jordan is so fun, because he has a lot of that. He's such a great player, and he went to Carolina, but he just seems like a rebel at heart, right? It always seems like his mom.
Yes.
Kind of kept him in check, but he likes to gamble a little bit. He likes to do what the boys are doing, right? So yeah, I chuckle, but you mentioned Vin is so smooth, and that's where I think Rory, gosh, his last name escapes me, the Angels announcer, same thing, just that smooth that you almost don't know you're listening. Johnny Miller of the Giants is also very good at that.
Adios, pelota.
Exactly. He's also very. It feels like those gentlemen feel like you're in your living room.
Yeah,
Dick Enberg, I think, had that too. Maybe it's that Midwest charm when you mix that Midwest, right? Isn't that there's something about it?
Yeah, there is.
Johnny Miller on ESPN was huge for me growing up in the 90s because the work he put in. So that's one of the voices I had growing up with was his.
And he's another one, right? So smooth. Yeah. And I don't know if all those gentlemen had radio backgrounds too. So the art of storytelling.
I know Miller does, because he was the voice of the Baltimore Orioles for many years. And now he's been many years the voice of the San Francisco Giants. Another voice I grew up listening to, especially for baseball, was John Rooney, when he was the voice of the White Sox for many years. And I had the unexpected pleasure of meeting John Rooney in 2005 when they won the World Series, because my friend, after I had a situation happen that left me down in the dumps, my friend came to get me, and he said, "We're going to go to Sox Fest." I said, "Really? Okay, cool." Yeah. He surprised me by dragging me into this lecture hall, which had a ton of seats and a microphone in the middle of the floor. And I'm going, "What are you doing to me?" And then I hear not only John Rooney, I also hear Ed Farmer come out.
Oh, wow.
I turned and looked at him and I go, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Wow." Yeah, got his autograph too.
That's good. And now I also grew up a little bit listening to Lindsey Nelson with the Notre Dame.
Yes.
Now, only because of, again, West Coast. I don't know. There used to be a show on Sundays. They'd replay the games.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an hour. And I was young to start. I could always figure out how do they cut out the game because the line would be in now later on or remove. And I'm like, how did they do that? Are they Devo in the game already? It's 1970-ish. So Lindsey Nelson, but I always felt he was so serious. But again, in my worldview as well, that was Notre Dame football. You have to be serious. Where the others seem to have so much fun. So
Lindsey Nelson did the replay for Notre Dame for many years. Harry Callis did it for many years. Longtime voice of the Phillies, and of course they would edit it out, and I would be up so early, waiting to watch the replay of that with Harry Callis or Lindsey Nelson. What I loved about Lindsey Nelson, and I know I'm dating myself with this, when Lindsey Nelson was at CBS, I loved his jackets. His jackets were out of control, and I loved them.
Old school.
Just absolutely old school.
And what it looks like is almost right. Like there's a long time where announcers almost became there was a form, right, or everybody kind of looked the same, dressed the same, almost the same tone. But almost seems like now we've gone full cycle. Now personalities are coming back, right?
Yep.
Having a little personality, having a little. I don't know if you want to call it a shtick, but you look great, by the way. See, I love the pink. I'm in the purple. You look great. And so I think, that's all coming back. But I do remember that he seemed to be I always thought was the bar a little bit. So I'm giving my biases. Gosh, I don't like to think I'm a West Coast bias guy, but I guess I am. The more
I was about to say, you guys talk about suits. The first name that really comes to mind for me, Craig Sager.
Oh,
Craig Sager.
Yeah.
Yes.
How fun.
Those were wild.
But you know, the fun part about Sager, the first time he had a wild jacket like that was totally accidental. And it became a thing. Dade says something very important. He says the first key to calling any sporting event is storytelling. The broadcaster has to make the audience feel like they're listening to a story rather than watching a product. That is so true. That's one reason I loved Vin Scully and I love Jim Durham and Jack Buck, Pat Summerall, Dick Enberg, and all the old schoolers, Al Michaels included when he was with ABC. All the storytelling just fit right in. And he also backs it up with this. Chris says that's the problem with current day. They view it as a product and not as a story to immerse ourselves in for a few hours. That's absolutely true. That's why I stick with my style, the old school, and learning about the players. Fonz, you mentioned it. Learning about the players, getting to know them, having little nuggets in your head about them, and you find ways to weave them in.
Mm-hmm.
You're making me think as we go. All of a sudden, I'm having these flashes of college football. Keith, I'm drawing O'Nelly.
Keith Jackson.
I'm drawing Keith Jackson. And I remember every once in a while, Frank Broyles.
Yes.
That Southern accent.
That Southern drawl.
When I kind of thought of the South, right, I thought of Frank Broyles, but he was so interesting and such a different. That's too dark, huh? Yeah. He was so different. So I really loved, that college football, and I think that was probably every Saturday it was on. Baseball would be too, but college football you could count on.
Yes.
I grew up loving. Still probably one of my favorite matchups, USC Notre Dame. Just the pageantry, the little bit of rivalry. It's not East versus West. It's more Midwest versus West, but it feels right. Growing up as a California boy, it felt like it's the one intersectional where it kind of meets and people don't really like you. Either kind of like USC or Notre Dame, or you don't.
You don't.
It's not like this love fest. There's a little bit of angst, right, with both on both sides.
Oh man, this has been so delightful. We're up against the break, but I gotta have you back on for a part 2 to this. Brian Fonseca joining us from the West Coast, joining us from California. Man, thank you so much. I love you very much. I gotta have you on for a part 2, man. Gotta have you back.
Okay. Be my pleasure.